Okay, we are live. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but we are now live. Welcome everyone, and please share this broadcast with your friends and colleagues. My name is Rick Ulfik, and I'm founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. There you can learn more about We the World. We're in day 2 of the 16th anniversary of 11 Days of Global Unity, September 11th to the 21st, which is the International Day of Peace. And back in 2004, We the World brought global partners together to launch 11 Days of Global Unity. And this year, 11 Days is concurrent with the Up Convergence and Peace Weekend with an extraordinary alliance of organizations, including Unity Earth, the Compassion Games, the Sign Network, We the World, and over 100 groups that I think are part of an unprecedented unity movement, which of course is more important now than ever. To learn more and participate in 11 Days of Global Unity, please go to 11daysofglobalunity.org, and the 11 is a numeral, 11daysofglobalunity.org. Each year, We the World hosts the 11 Days of Global Unity TeleSummit with 11 powerful dialogues on each of the 11 campaigns for change, September 11th through the 21st. And of course, this year, each one is at 1 p.m. USA Eastern Time. So today, day 2 of 11 Days of Global Unity is on the theme of interdependence. That came about after We the World launched Interdependence Day back in 2002 at the UN Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa. And then we collaborated with Benjamin Barber's Interdependence movement. And we put Interdependence Day on September 12th. And today, to talk about interdependence, we have an amazing group of people, and we're going to talk to them about how their work reflects interdependence. Today, we will have Wabagonees, Shannon Crossbear, Deborah Moldow, Loch Kelly, and Reverend Sylvia Sumter. Let's start with Shannon Crossbear. Grandmother Wabagonees Shannon Crossbear is a powerful spiritual Ojibwe Irish woman whose purpose is to demonstrate and promote gentle healing. And Shannon has worked with tribal and non-tribal communities in creating systems of care and circles of care, utilizing traditional intervention and promotion of culturally congruent practices. A skilled storyteller and educator, Ms. Crossbear works to improve conditions for future generations through protecting the fresh water sources. Shannon, could you please bring us into the circle and then talk about the importance of interdependence and we consciousness? And welcome to the broadcast.
Anin in the way Maganak. I want to just say hello to everybody and greet you as my relatives. And I'm going to say a few words in my language because it helps to center me. Chimigwech maniro nokamis mishnomish, beanavan gindamas Wabagonees. So I'm asking the grandfathers and the grandmothers to come and look down upon me and just help me to speak in a good way. I want to ask the Creator to bless me on this day so that I can have good thoughts, to see good things in people, to hear good things, and to be able to walk in a good way with others on this earth walk. And so that's what my prayer is today, to be with all of you and have this discussion about interdependence. And so, you know, I can't think of life without thinking about it being interdependent. It's not, it's the way that I was taught and the way that I was raised and the way that my thinking is. So I see the world in a way that really speaks to that interdependence. And always kind of knowing that even as human beings that we have that physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual parts of ourselves, right? And that we extend that out to not just human beings, but to the world at large. And I think we are at this time, it's a critical time in everything that we've been told. And that comes from a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different places. We hear that same kind of message that now is the time that we need to reclaim our humanity and be able to understand how Western science and indigenous knowledge, when we really come to what truth is, that they hold true, that natural law holds true in all of those disciplines. And so it's kind of a bringing back together that knowledge so that we can mend the sacred hoop of humanity and thus our world as a whole. And for me, it shows up. I happen to be very blessed by being in my homelands, to being here in the boreal forest, on the freshest of the clean water, freshwater sources on the continent. There's only one other body of water, fresh water, that is as large as Lake Superior, and that's in Russia. And it was formed in the Ice Age. And so all of these things reflect, right, where we're at. And that's why earlier, finding our sense of place where we're at. And I'm very, like I said, I'm very blessed because I can I'm looking out my window. I'm in the middle of the boreal forest. If that doesn't speak to interdependence, and understanding that interdependence does not mean that everything is the same, because a tree is a tree is a tree, but there are literally thousands of different kinds of trees. But a tree does what a tree does, which is be a tree, right? And we as human beings, all of the different things that we have to bring, but we're still human beings and we have a role to play in this interdependence, and understanding that. So I'm very glad to kind of begin this conversation, to think about how do we start to communicate in such a way that we bring this collective wisdom together so that we can do the things we need to do, which is to be in peace. And I think we're on that path. And I was even thinking about these 11 campaigns. When we talk about these 11 different campaigns, they're actually one campaign with all these 11 different components to it. But you can't have one without the other. You can't have social justice or economic justice without interdependence. You can't have unity without interdependence. You can't have peace, right? And we can't have all of the kinds of things that we'll be talking about in all of the campaigns. And so I kind of entered into the conversation with We the World in one campaign, but then I found that I kind of was everywhere because that's just the way it works. We can't separate out. And, like I said, I'm very blessed. I remember years ago, I was doing some work with a group of families, tribal families, all from different reservations here in the Midwest. And we were all in one room together and we were having this discussion. It was kind of a meeting to talk about some of the issues that our children were having. And so, there were people that were involved with systems, like some of the families were involved with the mental health system. And some of the families were involved with a substance use disorder system. And some of the families were involved with the juvenile justice system. And in this room, we were having this conversation about whether we should kind of break out into these different categories. And none of us could even think that way, right? First of all, we're all going to need each other's information, right? And one of our participants who is a relative of mine and a very wise woman, you know, she said, she explained it so well. She said, you know, the world is acting like they put us in these little different rooms, but we don't live in these different rooms. We live in one room, right? We live in one room. We live in one world. And this idea of interdependence and kind of splitting off really doesn't serve us, you know. So I think that the other thing that I hear a lot in terms of interdependence in this particular time has to do with the bringing together of all the different wisdoms from all the different peoples, so that we can together, you know, be able to talk about how we actually implement a world that works for everyone, right? How we actually are in that process. And we're in that process now, and it's exciting. And I'm just glad to be with you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Rick.
Well, thank you, Shannon. It's great to see you, and it's great to see everyone here. Let's bring in our next guest, Reverend Deborah Moldow, founder of the Garden of Light, is director of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle of the Source of Synergy Foundation. She is also a co-editor of the newly released book, Our Moment of Choice, Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future. Welcome to the broadcast, Reverend Deborah Moldow.
Thank you so much, Rick. And thank you to Shannon Crossbear for giving us those insights into the interdependent world that we can no longer deny. So I was very interested, Rick and I talked about bringing some of the contributors to the new book, Our Moment of Choice, onto the program today, because this new book is an example of it. It is a manifestation of interdependence. And it certainly is speaking to what Shannon was saying. How do we come together to co-create a world that works for everyone? And what are the mechanisms of interdependence? And I think probably the prime mechanism for that is synergy. And it is the Source of Synergy Foundation that produced this book through its Evolutionary Leaders Project. And all of the contributors to the book are members of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, including Rick and our other guests today, Loch Kelly and Sylvia Sumter. And so the book itself has 37 chapters by 43 evolutionary leaders offering their best wisdom as to what is this moment that we are in together here on planet Earth, and how can we address so many issues that are confronting us right now. Oh my God, you look at the world today and you just, I know, I sometimes just want to shake my head in despair. And yet I know in my heart of hearts that there is a certain level of chaos that is necessary for transformational level change. And that's what this book is all about. So as I was listening to Shannon speaking about the sacred hoop of the circle of life that we are all a part of, I was I was thinking about how the issues addressed in the book are very diverse. We have 7 different circles of different topic areas that it addresses. And yet there are some universal truths that seem to permeate all of the different circles. Like Shannon was saying, we are all in one big room, even though it seems that we are divided by our nationalities and our ethnicities and our languages and even our interests. And yet there's something happening right now, right here on planet Earth, that has never happened before, that is emerging from, you know, almost like the Buddhists would say that the lotus that arises from the mud. Something incredibly beautiful is coming forth. So I noticed that the people who gathered for this particular talk on interdependence, I don't think it's an accident that we all come from the spiritual world. So I'm an interfaith minister. Loch is an esteemed meditation teacher and author, and Reverend Sylvia is the minister of Unity of Washington, D.C. And all of our chapters reflect this, what I call emerging spirituality that's happening now. So my chapter is called Spirituality in the 21st Century, a Quiet Revolution. And I'm just wondering all the time why no one is noticing that a whole new set of values and beliefs is emerging all over the world. And they are totally congruent with so many of the indigenous teachings that the Native peoples have been trying to tell us, hello, you know, through the whole scientific revolution, industrial revolution, all of that, and all of the progress that it's brought us, all of the good things, and also all of the damage that we've done to our precious planet. And now we are awakening to our interdependence, to the fact that we need one another and we need to take care of one another, and we need to take care of the planet that gives us everything.
Yeah.
So these are some of the threads that run through this book. But the book, and you can find out more about the book at ourmomentofchoice.com, and find out about all of the amazing people who have contributed to this book. Many of them are very famous authors, such as Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, Deepak Chopra, Jean Houston, Joan Borisenko, Michael Beckwith, on and on. Somebody said to us, "This sounds like my bookshelf." And it is, in just like one little volume, you have all of these amazing people giving their wisdom and the best of what they have to say right now. And in this quite chaotic, pivotal moment that we are in, I think we are blessed with this title that Greg Braden gifted us with many years ago. And yet right now, this is our moment of choice, when it's not just a few people noticing that anymore. It's almost unavoidable. You look at the world in pandemic and in extreme income inequality and the Mother Nature just giving us fires and hurricanes and other signs of her discontent. This is the moment. This is the gateway moment when we can start to turn the ship around so that we do not hit the iceberg of the 6th great extinction. And instead, we make new choices. And it's an open invitation. This book is a call to action for everyone to be involved. Please, we need you. We need every one of you. This is our collective moment of choice. And I can't wait to hear from Loch Kelly and Sylvia Sumter about their chapters and their thoughts today, as well as we celebrate Interdependence Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, let's bring in Loch Kelly, who is author of the award-winning book, The Way of Effortless Mindfulness. He is a licensed psychotherapist and recognized leader in the field of non-dual meditation and awakening. Loch collaborates with the neuroscientists at Yale, UPenn, and NYU in the study of how awareness training can enhance compassion and well-being. And you can connect to him by going to lochkelly.org. That's LOCHKELLY.org. Welcome to the broadcast, Loch Kelly.
Thank you so much, Rick, and wonderful to hear from Shannon and Deborah, and so nice to be with Sylvia. Effortless mindfulness. Now, we've all tried effortful mindlessness, and that didn't work out so good. So I thought maybe effortless mindfulness would be better. So interestingly, what my chapter is about in this book, and one of my themes, is about bringing together ancient wisdom and contemporary science. And the word interdependence in Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, is often translated as emptiness in Zen and Tibetan Buddhism. And that word emptiness is often misunderstood to be as if there's a self and then one of the movements of awakening is to move to no self, and that sense of absence or void is thought, oh, is that emptiness? But the word emptiness means interdependence. So just to say that that insight that things are empty of independent existence. So as Shannon was saying about the tree, there's no such thing as a separate tree that isn't connected to earth, water, sunshine, and everything else. So isn't that interesting that this word, which is often misunderstood in this wisdom traditions of emptiness, as if, oh, we'll just be empty, there's nobody here, actually means interconnection or interdependence, that's the primary insight of Buddhism in some ways, that we're all connected. And the meditation that most people do is toward calming or stress management, but the next stage, which is moving from kind of deliberate mindfulness to effortless mindfulness, is shifting so that our perception actually perceives interdependence. So this is the awakening, is not just focusing from a small separate sense of self that sees things as subject and object, but through these kind of meditations, neuroscientists are now putting a group of us in fMRIs and using EEG machines and showing that what is distracted mind, kind of going out and going in, going out and going in, balances, and there's a feeling, there's a perception of seamlessness or interconnection that is the view that your consciousness begins to make the new normal. And so this is shown that people's brains change, and that compassion meditation, which is not just the loving kindness, but actually is a kind of awareness equally inside and out that's embodied and feels a natural arising of compassion, lights up a part of the brain that they just couldn't figure out. They thought, well, why is that part of the brain lighting up when there's compassion? And what it is the part that lights up when you're about to do an action in the world. So literally, compassion isn't a passive, I love everybody, but it lights up motivation for action in a compassionate way from a compassionate, interconnected sense of being. And so this is my great interest, is how can we introduce people who don't come from some of the stronger cultures, where interdependence is kind of the natural expression and experience that is through ritual and education, that people who have been trained in more secular scientific can utilize these awakening meditations to shift from this separate sense of self into this interconnected, spacious, and pervasive, loving presence that isn't just an idea or a philosophy, but literally is the way that we begin to perceive reality. And when that happens, our hearts naturally move toward compassionate action, social justice, community, rather than starting with the action. You start with the inner that moves to the outer. So it's really exciting work. And people now during this pandemic who have been indoors, many of my longer time students who have been doing this have started actually taking it as an opportunity to do more of these small glimpse practices every day. And they're just reporting incredible transformation and ability to be there for others who are in anxiety and fear and depression and worry, because they're are discovering their true nature and kind of shifting from head to heart space and seeing through the eyes of the heart.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Sure. So let's now bring in Reverend Sylvia Sumter. Reverend Sylvia Sumter has been an ordained Unity minister for 33 years. She currently serves as the Senior Minister of Unity of Washington, D.C. in the nation's capital. In addition to that, she is the founder of Stand Up for Humanity, a movement promoting the honoring of all people and creating a world that works for all. Welcome to the broadcast, Reverend Sylvia.
Thank you so much, Rick. And to everyone who's presented so far. I always get so much out of hearing. I'm used to, as a minister, giving and talking, and I love to receive wonderful wisdom because it stimulates and opens my heart, and it fills me with inspiration. So thank you for your sharing. Thank you, Deborah, too, for promoting this wonderful, powerful book. I'm enjoying it to the max. And so very similar thoughts, because you see, there's really only one mind and one presence, one heart, one spirit that connects us all. So, as I'm listening, I can say yes, 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 yes to everything that's being said. One of the things that came up for me, the word of interdependence, and I like to think of it as interdependence, because my chapter is titled Elevating Our Spiritual Nature, the Pathway to Healing Humanity. And I think one of the challenges that we are overcoming, thank God, but has been this sense of separation, and that we are somehow apart from one another, when the truth of the matter is we are on one living element of earth. We are filled with one people on the earth, one life form, which is made up of many different creatures, whether they are the two-legged, the four-legged, the creepy crawlers, the winged ones, those that swim in the sea, and those of us that, are here walking around. But we're all connected. And what I think will help us to really move through this wonderful awakening that is happening is when we come to the realization that not only are we one being, but there are many components of ourselves that we are primarily made up, or I call the threefold nature. We are spirit, we are soul, or in my instance, we would equate soul with the mind. So we can say there's a spirit, mind, body connection. or a spirit soul, because soul is for us, and the way I interpret it, it is the sum total of our awareness. And then we are physical beings. And we have, of course, traditionally thought of working with the physical world and our physical nature. And then we might elevate, of course, to our mental capacity to think and to be filled with intellectual knowledge and know-how and maybe even wisdom. And we oftentimes forget the primary essence of what we are and who we are, which is spirit. And spirit transcends, we have the saying mind over matter, but I always say mind over matter, but spirit over all, because it is the spirit, the spiritual nature, which is a form of energy. So I'm not going to give it, a name of a religious name of a particular God, but it is that animating force that gives life and that is life. We have spirit that indwells us. Every breath we take is the inspiration, the infilling of spirit. Every Mother Earth is breathing in spirit, and it's the sacred breath of life that even Mother Earth expresses. And so when we begin to recognize that there is a force that transcends what we can see and touch and hear and feel, but there's that animating force of spirit that interconnects everything into the matrix of life itself, and that we are all a part of that. And when we have that awakening thought, I think life on the planet will change. We will begin to honor the earth. We will begin to honor each other. We will begin to recognize that there really isn't any separation. So the things that we think that make us different, there is no difference. We are all one. And as you said, Shannon, many expressions of the one is not limited. The one is infinite, but it is the one that is woven into eternity, into life itself. And we are all a part of that. We cannot be separated from that. There's a statement that I always say, that the created can never be separated from the creator, meaning we are one with all that is. One with, and whether you want to call it the divine, one mind, whatever, we are one with all that is. And so my chapter really is about our awakening to our true nature, that when we do tap into the spiritual quality of our being, we will naturally begin to express those higher principles and values that you talked about, Reverend Deborah, and you talked about, Shannon, and you as well, like that. We will naturally be given the expression of compassion and of peace and of sharing the abundance. There won't be a fear of lack and limitation or a sense of separation, but that we would recognize that in this state of oneness, that we are all connected. We have different skills and talents, like a bouquet. There are roses and there are carnations and there are trees, even in the trees, right? There are juniper trees, this kind of tree, that's fine. But it all comes together. So we don't look for ways that make us different. We look for the way that brings us together. And for me, that way is the honoring of the nature of life itself, which is a spiritual expression, energy, vastness of just infinite potential, whatever you want to call it, that thing that that we all are experiencing as life. And so I call it spirit. And when we awaken to that, I think our interdependence is what will help us to recognize our interdependence. And we will start to see beyond physical means. If I look at you with my physical eyes, I will see your difference. But if I begin to look at you through spiritual eyes, which transcends physicality and even my mental thoughts, I will see the spiritual presence of love. I will see the presence of light. I will see the presence of the divine. And that's the goal. If we can awaken to this inner realm of who we are as spiritual beings, then we are able to move into this next phase of living, of life, of evolution. And we're being called to that. Everyone is waking up. I love I call them holy alliances. I love the holy alliances that are happening, whether it's from teaching, the mystical way of Zen Buddhism or mindfulness, or whether it is the indigenous way. Everybody is waking up. And this is an exciting time. And I think it's important that we approach it not through fear, but through the wonderful, through possibilities. What can we become? There's no limit. There's infinite potential to what life can be for us. And I believe some of my colleagues have called it the new human, the new species that is birthing itself. There's a new life expression that is giving birth to itself at this time. And we're all a part of it. We're all a part of it, and we all have a part to play, which is why, when I tap this part of me, I must take a stand for you. When I touch this part of me, I must embrace you, because there can be no me without you. And so the me is this greater sense of the divine self that encompasses everyone and everything. So I think we're in an exciting time. I'm absolutely loving the book, Deborah, because I'm using it to have dialogue, and people and to give people hope. We need hope at this time. So those of us who've been called as, I call us light bearers, witnessers, we're here to give hope that there is a better world that is unfolding. So I'm just delighted to be a part of it, to be a part of the evolutionary leaders, and to meet and greet all of you. And as you say, Shannon, my sisters, my brothers, my relatives, my one and only you. So thank you so much for being willing to listen to what I have to share.
That's so wonderful. Yes. And we always say talk about the me within the we, which is another way to put what you were just talking about, Reverend Sylvia. So I thought maybe we'll have a little kind of round table, and we can react to each other's words. And one thing that I thought maybe we could talk about, since the subject is interdependence, our dear friend Benjamin Barber, who did start this interdependence movement, and now he has since passed, but he did start this. And one of the things that he talked about that he thought was really important was this idea of conscious interdependence. In other words, whether we're conscious of it or not, we are living in this interdependent world. What we eat, who we vote for, what we shop for, the media that we consume. There's all kinds of things that we do every day, and people aren't thinking about how our individual actions actually ripple out and affect the entire planet. There's this idea of the butterfly effect, right? Like in Peru, a butterfly flaps its wings, and there's it is connected. The act of doing that is connected in some way to a typhoon that takes place in Asia, a few weeks later. There is some connection between them. So the question is, how can we move to have a society which operates with conscious interdependence? And we would, in We the World and the We campaign, we would call that a we-based society, where it's all about we consciousness and the common good. So and I think that we're at a moment now where the pandemic and the protests against racism and inequality and all of the things that are going on, climate change, the climate crisis and the marches about that, all of this kind of reflects this idea that the health and well-being of each member of society is essential for the health and well-being of the whole of society. I mean, this is the lesson that I think we are learning now. Like if there's one person sick with the pandemic in a particular community, we know that that can affect the health and well-being of the entire community. So this is like on the front page of the headlines now. So hopefully this is a lesson. So anyway, any thoughts about this idea of moving towards conscious interdependence? Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to thank everybody because, Loch, one of the things that you said that was so hopeful to me is that people can learn to see the world in a world relational view, from a world relational view. And so then I was reflecting, Rick, on what you were saying about, so how do we assist people? What are the mechanisms by which we assist people to be able to do something that is as easy as breathing for me, right? It's just like, it just is. So what are the processes or mechanisms or, however that gets articulated that, would help lead? And I think, Loch, you spoke to some of that intentionality. But what are the mechanisms we have in our society for embedding those into, into a life? And the reason I say that is because I think back about, in my own head thinking about, well, there wasn't a time that I didn't understand that this is related to this is related to this is related. I mean, I can't imagine that. And I also know that there were things that I was blessed with that were embedded that created space for that kind of intentionality, to think about that deeply. So when I think about, from the very beginnings of being a child and going through a transfer of character ceremony, or when you're an adolescent and a coming of age ceremony, and what that time is about, to really consciously give people transitions and opportunities to really think deeply about what it means to be a human being, right? And and what it means to be part of that collective spirit that moves through all things, right? The spirit that moves through all things, through life, as Sylvia was saying. And so I know for my own community and my children and grandchildren and soon to be great grandchildren are, it really is, how do we continue to do those things, not only for ourselves, but to really be able to add to the conversation, because there may be something there that is helpful, right? To what is our contribution to that healing the sacred hoop of humanity. So that's what I was thinking about in this interdependence.
Go ahead, Reverend Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you. That just triggered a thought in terms of what Stand Up for Humanity is all about. And it is that everybody has something to contribute. And that when we offer that, that's what benefits, all of humanity. So it could be something as simple as, I make a conscious decision when I'm walking down the street to present, a smile, so that the energy and the environment that surrounds me is one that is welcoming and open, so that it affects the stranger who crosses my path, feels that. That's standing up for humanity. Or it could be something as complex as developing, some new form of energy that is transferred to the earth or whatever. Some scientists may come up with something, and that is standing up for humanity. In whatever way that every soul has something to give. And so to encourage us sharing our light, sharing our talents, sharing our gifts, all for the betterment of humanity. So that there are people who think, well, I have nothing to, who am I? And what can I do to affect humanity? And yet, Rick, your comment about the butterfly effect is very important. When it flaps its wing, the energy in the United States is altered. So we have to understand that we are interconnected. And so what I add to the group is adding to humanity, what I'm expressing. So I would love to see where everyone's ability to share and shine is encouraged, from little ones to like you said, how do we help to develop what it means to be a human being, and we can start there, and as a practical way to recognize we're together, and let's do something.
And one of the things you just said there, where some people feel like they have a sense of powerlessness, like, what can I do? But the reality is that they and everyone are doing things every day that actually affect everything. So it's making that connection that what you do is important. I mean, when I go, I'm sort of in between where Shannon said that she's been conscious of interdependence for her entire life. But I can't say that's true for me. But at a certain point, I realized it. And I began to understand what effect I have, even if I'm just walking down the street. So, or in a subway in New York City. So I make a point of actually, making eye contact with people, which some people say, well, don't do that in New York City. That's not a good idea. But I always would do that. And I always smile and say hello to people, and also, and so funny, my other half, Seffi here, will be walking down the street and I'll do that with someone, and Seffi will say, oh, do you know her? Or do you know him? And I'll have to remember now, oh yes, we're all relatives. Of course I know.
So Rick, I think, when you're talking about and that consciousness about how sometimes it's even just raising our consciousness, right? I work a lot with helping people to think about their consciousness about water, about clean water sources. And so, I often talk about the fact that, our bodies are made up of approximately 70%, our minds are 80% water. But the interesting thing is that when you start to, it can be as simple as being in the shower and just saying, thank you, however that happens for you. For me, it's Creator. Thank you, Creator, for allowing me this water to cleanse myself externally, and maybe think about that internally as well. But to really say those things, like what impressed me when we raise that consciousness and it becomes worldwide, knowing that, those grandmothers that started to walk around these Great Lakes to bring attention to our water, Josephine Mandamin was not a young woman when she started that process in 2003. And she's passed now, but she, it was a grandmother who walked around these Great Lakes with a bucket of water to bring attention to the water, right? And at the same time that they were doing that, Dr. Emoto was over here in the Western science world doing his studies about changing water at a molecular level, and how intention and a set of intentions could change water at a molecular level. What I found interesting and fascinating and true is that the same three phrases that he was using were the same three phrases that the grandmothers were using. And that is water, I love you. Water, I thank you. Water, I respect you. So, and then when we think about that, those three things, saying that to the water, if I say that to the water, am I not saying that to me? Am I not saying that to you? You're made up of water. I can change at a molecular level by those three statements. That's so powerful, right? So powerful. And and when people think, well, I can't take on the big, the big picture, it's even that little thing about just raising our consciousness when we take a drink of water can change everything. So so I think that whole idea that you're talking about it, and with everything, just thinking about that interdependence, thinking about that food source that's feeding that body, thinking about that person that's contributing to your life in whatever way that happens. So so keep smiling on the subway. I don't know if I'll ever get on a subway, but if I do, I sure would like to see somebody smiling at me.
Good. How about you, Reverend Deb?
Well,
Any
I'm
thoughts?
really appreciating this conversation because this is all showing what's happening in this moment of choice, that we're awakening to a greater truth about who we really are and how our behavior in this world matters. And I loved what you said, Rick, about it being a process. Like we can forgive ourselves, our previous selves, for having beliefs that contributed to separation, for maybe being judgmental or using the earth's resources unconsciously. But now we're learning and we can wake up. And I know that, for instance, now and then I still use a plastic bag, but I don't feel good about it anymore. I don't take it for granted anymore. I think about that sea turtle that might choke on it 50 years from now. So I use it with a different consciousness. And I hope that I'll get to the time when I don't use them anymore at all. But I can be gentle with myself as I make this transition from being an unconscious human to being a conscious human. And in the book, Our Moment of Choice, every chapter has a call to action that follows it, with mostly very, very simple suggestions of things that we can all do in our daily life if we choose. They're just suggestions. Everyone is going through this process differently, and yet everyone's part of it. And that's what's so exciting right now. The Native Americans have been trying to tell us this stuff for so long, but did we listen, or did we think that they lived in a more primitive way and that our modern way was better? Well, guess what? There's wisdom that we need to learn now, so that the next evolution of our modern ways doesn't throw out the good that it's brought us, but finds ways to have these comforts and these expanded opportunities that we have now without doing harm to one another, without doing harm to the earth. And once we start to make these different choices, we change not just ourselves, but changing ourselves changes the world. And we become the world, operating as one great harmonious system, which is, dare I say, how we were always meant to be. So this is a very exciting time. And this time is an invitation for everyone to bring forth their gifts and talents, and for us to recognize that even people who seem to be not giving are contributing, that there's always something that we can find to do, each and every one of us, that's going to bring the conversation further the way this book does, hopefully inspire a lot of people to make new choices, or just simply within ourselves to open our hearts to one another, to realize when we make a judgment about someone else that it's just our opinion and that the truth is this divine unity of us and the living planet in a living universe. And that synergy is what it's all about, finding out how to work together to make the world a better place. And that's why I'm so grateful to the Source of Synergy Foundation for bringing together the evolutionary leaders and for producing this book that I hope will be a source of joy and inspiration. The way I loved it when Reverend Sylvia held up the book and said, I'm just loving it. You know, I'm just really, really enjoying it because there's so much in here that's giving me hope for the future. And that is our subtitle. Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future.
Exactly. So, you know, one thing that I wanted to react to that you were talking about was this process, Deborah, of inner transformation that we are going through. And there's an interesting kind of way of looking at that I heard a few years ago, which is this idea of moving from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. So it's like if you're talking about global citizenship, right, which is really the you know what's behind interdependence and we consciousness and all of that. So one stage would be unconscious incompetence. Like you don't really, you know, you get the plastic bags like you were talking about, or you do these other things that don't really serve people and the planet. You buy, you know, let's say things that are done through sweatshops, or, you know, there's all kinds of things that harm people that people don't think about, you know. So you're in that mode of unconscious incompetence in terms of global citizenship. But then you start to become aware of things, and then you move into that phase of conscious incompetence. Like you were saying, Deborah, you're still using plastic bags, but you're thinking about it. You realize when you take that action, so you try to limit it as much as possible, but you're aware when you're doing something that doesn't serve the rest of the planet in terms of global citizenship. So it's conscious incompetence. Then you move into the area of conscious competence. So then you're doing everything you can think of. You're cutting down on your waste, and you're, you know, conserving water, and you're doing, you know, all the different things that actually serve people on the planet, and you're thinking about it as you're doing it. Then the final stage is unconscious competence, where you don't have to think about it. It just comes naturally, and that's it. That's what your life is. So anyway, I thought that's kind of interesting. Loch, would you like to share some thoughts? And then we'll kind of move to our, we have kind of a surprise for the ending
Sure.
here.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just to say that I know that model, you could call it, rather than unconscious, because a lot of people think of it as not being conscious, but almost spiritual competence, or interdependent consciousness, or so you're in more of a flow consciousness, which is kind of a natural independence. Yeah. So yeah, just like many of you, I think the you know, the conscious interdependence, I'm very much about a lot of small glimpses rather than doing closed-eyed meditation a lot. It's even working with kids and adults, it's kind of pointers or education to ask a question of a group of kids I was with. What's it like to look out of your eyes? And what's it like if you drop your awareness and look out of the eyes of your heart? You know, and then asking questions like, okay, is this a altered state, or is this more your true nature? To which the other is actually you're walking around in an altered state, and now you're more in touch with your, and when you hear them say, what's it like to look out of the eyes of your heart? They'll start to say, I feel like I'm the same as everyone. They'll become like the wisdom teachers because they're perceiving that way. Or like you were saying, Shannon, if you just talk to someone and say, okay, now look out the window at nature and now feel the shift of your consciousness as you feel, do you feel connected to nature? And when you feel connected to nature, how do you feel, who are you and what is that like? And then just really getting the, whatever methods or the how-to or the practical suggestions, being willing to be creative and help people shift their consciousness to interdependence consciously, and then feel that they can speak from there and actually, bring it out of a taboo. So they can speak spiritually from their direct experience. And so then they surprise themselves rather than just talking about the mundane things that are, culturally okay. So it's a real big shift as we grow, as many of us are talking about, almost this next stage of evolution of consciousness and human evolution and human development, really. Can we help it along to use all our skills and our willingness to help people really experience it for themselves? So I think that's my main thing, is really to perceive and to shift levels of mind from thought-based to awareness-based to embodied, interconnected flow, and then start talking and creating and relating from this new, more spiritual dimension that's embodied and natural, and really start to feel the difference, and familiarize ourselves with that. So that's a hopeful possibility.
Yeah, definitely. So what we were thinking of doing is we have this thing called the Global Declaration of Interdependence. And I'll tell you what it is and the origin. When we launched 11 Days of Global Unity in 2004, there were all kinds of things that came together to make that happen. And one of the things was this idea of the Global Declaration of Interdependence. It was inspired by the Earth Charter, which celebrated its 20th anniversary this year. And many people have signed this over the years. The first person to sign it, interestingly enough, was Marshall Rosenberg, who was the creator of nonviolent communication, but also Jane Goodall signed it. James Twyman, way back in, I think it was 2005 or 2006, he did a kind of a journey through the 11 days to Assisi, and he chose this Global Declaration of Interdependence to be the document that would be presented to global leaders, including the Pope in Assisi. And so it's had this amazing history. So, and it's only 11 lines long. That's the amazing thing. So we thought we could try this idea. We've done this live, but we thought maybe online we can do this too. I'll read one line, and then you all repeat the line back. And we just do that for the 11 lines. And then if anybody has any final comments, and then that'll be it for today. So are you ready?
Yes.
Ready.
Okay. So first the preamble. I'll read that, and then we'll do the declaration itself. In the preamble, in acknowledgement of the many existing documents and efforts that promote peace, sustainability, global interconnectedness, reverence for life, and unity, We the World hereby offers the following Declaration of Interdependence as a guiding set of principles. It is inspired by the Earth Charter, the essential values of which represent those of the many peoples of the earth. And by the way, the Earth Charter partnered with us when we launched this declaration back in 2004 for the launch of 11 Days of Global Unity. Okay, here we go with the declaration. We, the people of planet Earth,
We, the
The
people
The
of
people
people
of
of
planet
planet Earth,
in recognition of the interconnectedness of all life
In
in
recognition
recognition of the
of the
interconnectedness
interconnectedness of
of
all
all
life,
life,
and the importance of the balance of nature
and the
and the
importance
importance
of the balance
balance
of
of
nature,
nature,
hereby acknowledge our interdependence.
hereby
acknowledge
acknowledge our
our
interdependence
And affirm our dedication
and
and
affirm
affirm
our
our dedication
to life-serving environmental stewardship
to
to
life-serving
life-serving environmental
environmental
stewardship,
stewardship,
the fulfillment of universal human needs worldwide,
the
the
the fulfillment
of
of universal human needs worldwide,
economic and social well-being,
economic
economic and
social
social well-being,
and a culture of peace and nonviolence
and a culture
and
of
a culture of peace and nonviolence
nonviolence
to ensure a sustainable and harmonious world
to
to
ensure
ensure a sustainable and harmonious
harmonious
world
for present and future generations.
for
for
present
present
and future generations.
generations.
All right,
Amen.
we did it.
Great.
So any final thoughts? And then I want to kind of turn it over to Shannon to kind of do a closing. Any final thoughts before we do that?
onward and upward.
It's time.
Our moment
all-
of choice is
it's all
time.
good.
All good. Thank you. And of course, as I was saying earlier, if people want to find out more about We the World and the We campaign, please go to we.net and 11daysofglobalunity.org to participate in 11 days and these 11 campaigns that go all year round, 11daysofglobalunity.org. So Shannon, take us away.
Okay, so I just want us to think about that spirit that moves through all things. And many times in our ceremonies, when we are coming to the conclusion of our ceremonies, one of the things that, in addition to saying that statement, we are all related, to remind us of that interdependence. And then we also get to the point where we do say what Sylvia was saying. We say, we're of one heart now, one mind, one prayer, one people, just one. And so as you go throughout your day, whenever you're listening to this, maybe you're hearing us live, but maybe you're hearing us at another point in time, we just invite you to pick up one moment of choice, to be able to spend some time reflecting upon what it means to be in this world that's interdependent, and what a beautiful gift it is that you have to offer to healing that sacred hoop of humanity. So go until next time, as we say. Gigawabamin.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Amen.
Shannon. And Deborah, do you want to just say the link once more for our moment of choice?
Oh, thank you. Everyone, you're welcome to find out more about this unique book at ourmomentofchoice.com. We invite you into the conversation. Everyone is part of it and in this interdependent world.
Exactly. And remember what we always say, 3 eyes that make a we. And I think we accomplished that today. Inspire, inform, and involve. So we're going from a me society to a we society, right? Thank you
All
all.
right.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
It's been a
Shannon.
Thank you,
pleasure
everyone.
with
Thank you,
everyone.
Sylvia, Shannon, Deborah.
Yes.
Bye.
No.
Bye.
Don't